I'd like to invite Ian Mackellar now to speak to us. Ian, as I think you've probably seen in the program, is a career journalist. May I say that? And has worked both rail, Department of Transport, HM Treasury. Is presently the business editor for the Hunts Post. But we're very, very interested to hear your perspective on the busway and clearly the public impact. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, I guess I'm here to talk about communication, and the first thing I have to talk about is a failure of communication. Like David, I knew nothing until about 4:15 of the requirement to give this presentation. So it'll be straight off the cuff, and Bob tells me a few minutes ago that he was expecting it to be off the wall as well. So I'll come back to some further failures of communication in due course, but I first got involved with this project in late 2003 when I joined the Hunts Post, when Shona was the cabinet member at Shire Hall in charge of the guided bus, and the then editor of the Hunts Post had a major campaign called Boot Out the Bus. He was absolutely adamant that the last thing that was going to happen on the old railway corridor between Cambridge and St Ives was a guided busway. So when I got there, he turned that coverage of that project over to me, which was absolutely fine. As a railwayman, I was perfectly happy to see the railway refettled and brought back into passenger use. So we supported an outfit called Cast Iron, which was dedicated to doing that. And at the time, as those of you who were involved in the Transport and Works Act application will recall, there were around about 3,500 letters of support for refettling the railway, and I think it was 3 in favour of a guided busway. So there was overwhelming public support. Of course, as journalists, we're there to act as a conduit between readers and those who are dealing with these projects. During the course of the public inquiry, the editor suddenly said, well, look, since we're opposing this thing, wouldn't it be a good idea if we had an alternative to put forward? We go to press in 4 hours, and the inquiry closes next week. So I've still got the envelope that I did this thing on the back of. And we realised heavy rail was not a runner on a formation as old as that. So we came up with light rail and a combination of light rail and conventional bus services on a refettled road network, building part of the A14 project early, the local road bit rather than the trunk road bit, and using that for Andy's buses. Had, I confess, a bit of difficulty getting light rail from Chesterton into Cambridge city centre, but we fudged that and suggested to the inspector at the inquiry that he might like to think of our proposal, though not a formal objection, as an alternative to the County Council's guided bus scheme. He was very polite, and as you all know, backed the guided bus scheme. Now we'd had lunch with the leader of the County Council in the lead up to the public inquiry, and we said, look, we're not fans of it, you know that, but what we are is in favour of celebrating success in Cambridgeshire, and particularly in our patch. So if you can get this scheme through the Transport and Works Act process, we'll back you, but we'll hold your noses to the wheel on delivery. And I don't think anybody at the County Council would argue with the fact that we've done that. we backed the project. We're actually really enthusiastic about the project, but we're not terribly amused by the fact that April 2009 became August 2011. And therein lies another failure of communication. There was no dialogue, so far as we can judge, between the county and the contractors in relation to managing people's expectations about delivering the busway. We had a go at the thing when the first bit of track was laid in early 2008, I think, if memory serves, on an extraordinarily cold, wet February morning when the first mile or so had been laid. And it was an absolutely exquisite ride. We were admittedly pretty relieved to get inside a bus out of sub-zero temperatures, but we were absolutely convinced then that this project was going to succeed. Then when Andy Campbell told me the specification that he had managed to persuade his boss, Brian Souter, whom I'd come across in the railway privatisation process, now Sir Brian, of course, that he could buy air-conditioned buses with leather seats and free Wi-Fi, it was very clear that, because Brian Souter doesn't let Andy or anyone else spend money like that unless he thinks he's going to get a return on it, that this was going to be a serious project. And so we kept the county council as far as we were allowed to delivery, and April 2009 became late summer 2009, whatever that meant. Sometime before the 21st of September, Graham Hughes told me. And then that became the 29th of November, and so on, and so the rest you know. So that managing of the public's expectations could have been handled a great deal better. It was that was a put. It was very frustrating for us because we were convinced it was going to be good when it eventually came to pass. But we did need readers to understand that this was a high-quality transport system, as Bob was saying. It wasn't just another smelly old diesel 25-year-old double-decker. These are serious vehicles, and the ride is as good as a TGV, if not as fast. So, but still not bad, as you realised this afternoon. So that, in a nutshell, is the outsider's perspective of this.